Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today in this video we are going to see the introduction to Python, which would be a bit overview, and then we are going to set up Python to work with the Visual Studio Code. My name is Mukesh Kala. I am a 4 times UiPath most valuable professional, certified solution architect and an advanced RPA developer as well. I have shared my LinkedIn details on the page. Feel free to connect me on the LinkedIn and I would be happy to be part of your network. Okay, so the first thing first, right? What exactly is this Python, right? A lot of you might already know it, and I believe some of you are absolute beginner who have no idea that what exactly is Python and how we are going to get started. So that is why there is a quick introduction for you. In case you are someone who is already aware of what exactly is Python, you can go to the timestamp in the description and you can directly jump to the section where we are integrating this with the VS Studio Code. Okay, so if we talk about the history of the Python was first created by Guido van Rossum, first released in 1991. This language was designed to emphasize the code readability and the simplicity. If we talk about the name, the word Python, that is derived from the British comedy series Monty Python's Flying Circus, reflecting the creator's aim in making coding as a fun language. If I talk about the key feature, the first key feature, it's easy to learn and easy to understand. The syntax of the Python is simple. It's as like you are writing in English. It's easy to read, write, and it's easy to understand as well. Python is an interpreted language, which means that all the execution happens line by line and not the complete program as a whole. The good part about Python is it is a dynamically typed language. When I say dynamically typed, so for example, when you are creating variable, if you are coming from a programming background, so when you create variables, you have to assign data type, which means that you have to tell the programming language that, hey, this is a variable, this is an integer variable, this is a string, this is a boolean, right? But however, with the Python, you do not have to declare the variable types. However, during the runtime, Python automatically determines based on the data which you are trying to put into that variable, and that's why it is a dynamically typed language, meaning that Python automatically assigns the data while it is running the program. Python has a versatile application. It can be used in web application, AI, ML, and lot of other areas. So it's not only restricted to writing small programs, you can use it for other purposes as well. The other feature of Python is that it has a extensive standard library, meaning that it has a vast set of library to do and accomplish your day-to-day task. Lastly, Python has a huge community support from its user. It has an extensive community which is available online. At any point of time you need some help, you can go to online, find the resources, find the libraries, and that will help you to become a better developer in the Python, right? So this was a brief introduction about the Python and what are its key features, right? Now the second thing is why Python is so popular, right? You might have heard that, okay, let's do it with the Python. If you are coming from AI ML, you might have seen that, okay, let's write this model in Python, right? Why exactly is that? Why Python is so popular? The first reason for that is readability and the simplicity. It's easy to write, it's easy to understand, right? So a lot of developers prefer that. Second thing, Python is versatile. It can handle a large amount of tasks as well as varied amount of tasks. So it's a versatile language. Python has a very rich ecosystem, which means that depending on your requirement, for example, if you want to do a web development, you have something which is called Django framework. If you want to do ML, you have something which is called TensorFlow, and in case you want to do the data analytics, you have something which is called Pandas, right? So it is having a very rich ecosystem. That means that depending on a requirement, you can use Python for different requirements. And lastly, as I already mentioned, it has a huge community support and huge set of libraries, right? So these are the some of the reasons that's why Python is so popular, right? Okay, so now that we understand what is Python, why it is popular, right? So the next immediate question comes that how can I install the Python, right? And to install the Python, there are some very basic steps. You have to go to this website, which is python.org, go to the downloads, download the specific version and hit install, right? I have already created a dedicated video where I am showing all these steps which you see on the screen in a step-by-step manner in a video. So in case you are not able to follow these steps by looking working on the PPT, you can just watch the video whose link is available in the description, and at the end of that video you would have Python installed on your computer, right? I have put the link of the video in the description for your reference. Okay, so now you have the basic knowledge of Python, you have installed the Python on your computer. The next thing comes is, how do I set up the environment? Because once you install the Python on your computer, it's in the CMD, I say Python version and gives me the version. But if I have to use it to create some program, to create some application, to write some AI, ML, or to write any integration, right? How do I set up that environment? And that is what this thing is, setting up the environment, right? So when we talk about the environment, so the people who are coming from the programming background, you might have heard of something which is called IDE, stand for Integrated Development Environments, which is nothing but providing you facilities to write code, debug it, edit it, build the solution, right? So depending on your application, depending on your company, depending on the type of I would say machine you are using, Mac, Linux or Windows, there are various different kinds of IDEs which are available in the market, and you can use any of the IDE to write Python. So some of the popular IDE where developers use to write Python is PyCharm. The installation, you can download it from JetBrains. The features, it's a smart code navigation, code refactoring, built-in terminal, version control, and it has support for web frameworks, right? So you can use the PyCharm. You can just go to Google, download the PyCharm and install it, right? So that's one IDE for you to just explore, install and run Python. The second one is the Visual Studio Code, which we are going to see in this video. You have to just go to Visual Studio Code website, download it. The features are, it's a lightweight, extensible through plugins, it has an integrated terminal, it has a version control, and it has also the intelligence, which means that when you are writing the code, the IDE gives you option that, hey, do you want to write this, do you want to know this, like all those intelligence thing, right? So you can use PyCharm, you can use the VS Code. And the third one, which a lot of Python developers are using, it's the Jupyter Notebook. You can install it via Anaconda distribution, download it from Anaconda, or install it by pip install notebook. And the features are interactive computing, support for live record, visualization and narrative text, right? So these are the high level features of the different terminals, right? So IDE can be anything, you can use anything apart from this. We have a lot other IDEs which are available. So this tutorials I am going to use this one, which is called the VS Code, right? Now when we talk about installing of the VS Code, you just have to go to this website, which is the installer of the VS Code. You just go to the IDE, download it, and you can just double click and install it. In case you need help in installing the VS Code on your computer, for that also I have a dedicated video. It's a small 2-3 minutes video. I have put the link of the video in the description for your reference. Click on that video and that will guide you in a step-by-step manner to install the VS Code, right? So IDE is entirely your choice, right? You're free to use the Jupyter, PyCharm, or you can also use the VS Code, right? So I have already shared how you can install the VS Code, right? So till this point, I think now all of us understand what is Python. We have the Python installed on a computer, and we have one of the IDE which we are going to use to write Python, right? And I hope you are seeing this video, so you are also trying to install the VS Code and you would have successfully installed, right? So that's about the installation and the setup. So we only require these things. You need one IDE, you need the Python, and then accordingly when we move ahead, right, we will find out that what all things we require and what are the best practices we need to follow, right? So if you are able to reach till this point, just comment down that the installation completed. So I understand that yes, at least you have completed the Python and at least you have completed one of the editor, or I would say one of the IDE you have already have, right? So if that is the case, then we can move forward to the next stage. Okay. Okay, so I am back to my machine, and you can see that I have opened my Visual Studio Code, right? So this is the IDE which I have chosen to write my code, right? So to get started with the IDE, first of all, you need to go back to your folder. Now into your folder structure, just go and create a new folder, right? So this folder I am going to call as my Python project, right? You can create it at any places. I want to keep it into my training folder, so I am just putting it into my this location. This for YouTube, so I just created one thing which is called the my Python project, and initially that folder would be blank, right? So this is the first thing which you have to do. Just create a blank folder anywhere on your computer where you want to keep it segregated, and that would have this thing, right? Now first time when you come to the Visual Studio Code, you will see this kind of interface. I have selected the black theme, that's why it's looking like this. You can select the light theme as well, right? So now you can always go here and you can start creating a new file, writing a Python code, and that should work, right? However, whenever we write code in VS Code or when we are dealing with Python, right, there is a concept of workspace, right? Now what exactly is that workspace and why it is important? That's what I wanted to give you the quick information, so that you guys are aware that what exactly I am trying to do, right? So I am back to my slide where I'm talking about why do we need workspace in VS Code, right? So these are some of the points, and hopefully you would be able to understand that why workspace is important. So creating a workspace in VS Code is strictly necessary for running the Python scripts. It has several benefits, such as it has an organized project structure. When your project grows, all of your projects are in a single place. The second thing is consistent configuration, which means that for that workspace, you want to have a specific kind of configuration which you do not want to have it into the other projects. So creating a workspace helped me to create a consistent configuration. The third thing in the slide which is mentioned is environment manage, which means that you can manage the virtual environments for specific projects. Project can has its own dependency, and project do not conflict with the other projects. The next one is the version control, which means that it's easy if you want to use version control like Git, SVN or TFS. And lastly, for the extensions and the customizations, extensions can be configured to work specifically for your workspace, providing language support, formatters, and more tailored to your project's needs, right? So in simple word, creating a workspace creates a segregated environment for me where I can just put my stuff related to that project, configuration to that project, and it does not impact the other workspace and the other projects, right? So that is why we have to work in workspaces, and that is what we are going to do in this tutorial, right? So let's go back to the terminal and see creating and opening the workspace. Okay, so I am back to my Visual Studio Code, right? So once you have opened the Visual Studio Code, all you have to do is you can go to the file menu at the top, and then you have to select this option, which is the open folder. Okay, so file and then select open folder, and in the open folder now you have to select the folder which you just created, right? So if you remember, I created this folder into my this path, which is the my Python project, right? So I'll go to that location, which is this, and then I will select this folder and I'll select this, and that way you are in the my Python project, right? So that is the first step of creating the workspace. You create the folder and you just open that folder. Now whatever I do has to be in this folder and it's not scattered, right? So that's why I created this folder here, right? Okay, so once you have opened this workspace or the folder, right, so the next important thing in your Python execution would be something which you are going to utilize is this guy, which is called the terminal, right? So what exactly is a terminal? So I can go to the top menu and you see that I have something which is called terminal. I can go here and click on this guy, which is new terminal, right? So terminal is this window where you can write commands to set up the environment or even to run the program and see the output of the execution, right? So by default, as you can see, when I selected here, my terminal is coming as PowerShell, because PowerShell is something which is by default available in the window. Depending on your requirement, you can change the things as well, but this video I am trying to work with PowerShell, so I would be using the PowerShell, right? And when I open the terminal, you can see that here I have got this thing, right? So this is my terminal, which is a PowerShell terminal. Okay, the next step is you understand the concept of workspace, you have the terminal with you. Now the next thing as a Python developer, which is a best practice, is to create a virtual environment, right? So you have to create a virtual environment by using a command which is called venv, which is called the virtual environment, right? env, right? Virtual environment, right? So you have to create a virtual environment for yourself, right? Now you might be thinking that, Mukesh, why do I even need a virtual environment, right? And to answer that, I am quickly going to go back to my presentation, right? So now we have the workspace which is segregating the projects. Now there is something which is called virtual environments. What exactly that is, right? So I'm going to read through the slides. So virtual environment is Python is a self-contained directory that contain Python installation for a particular version of Python plus number of additional packages. It is a tool. So virtual environment is a tool to keep the dependencies required by different projects at separate places by creating Python virtual environments for them. And this is one of the most important tool which the Python developers use, because they do not want to mess up their projects, right? So the first segregation was at the workspace level. The second segregation comes by creating a virtual environment, right? Now you might be thinking, what is the benefit and what are the what are the key features or benefits for using the virtual environments? The first one is virtual environments isolates the dependencies of different projects, as we'll understand. This means that package installed in one environment won't affect the other environment, right? Avoid the conflicts. So different projects might require a different version. So for example, I am using dependencies, and in one project I want the version 1.2 and in the second project I want the version 1.3, right? If I'm not using the concepts of environment, what would happen? I have to every time go and roll back to a specific version. Creating environments give me a feasibility to have control that which project require which versions of the dependencies. Okay, using a virtual environments ensure that the same dependencies and their versions are used every time the project is set up. So let's say this time I have set up this environment with PowerShell. I am going to write Python. I'm going to use this version of Python. I'm going to use any other library. So next time when I open, I want all these setups to be exactly the same for this environment. If I'm not creating the environment based on whatever is available with the VS Code, it is going to give me that thing. So creating a virtual environment help me to have the same dependency whatever I have set up in that projects, and that's a benefit and very crucial for the Python developers, right? The second thing is you can easily replicate this environment by sharing the requirement.txt file. So for example, I am the senior developer, or I have a group of team members who are working in the same projects, and now I want to share the same environment to them. So rather than they going to their VS Code and setting this environment again, I can just share my requirement.txt file to them and they can actually get the same environment, same version, same packages, everything, right? Now each project has its own environment tailored for its specific needs without affecting the global Python installer, right? And lastly, virtual environments make it easy to set up and manage the Python environments for different projects, more or less the same thing, right? So that's why virtual environments are important, right? And I hope you got the concepts of virtual environment. So the next thing is going to Python and setting up the virtual environments. Okay. Okay, so now back to my VS Code, and let's try to create a virtual environment. So the first thing first is I'm going to write the code here to create the Python virtual environment. So I just write Python, then I write -m venv and put a space and then write venv, right? So what I am doing here is this will create a folder of venv into my Python project, which is this directory, and that would be my virtual environment, right? So as of now, if you see, my folder is blank, it is having nothing. So I go here and I write Python m venv, and then I am trying to create a folder called venv in the project directory for virtual environments. So I go here and I say enter, right? So now you see, as soon as this command is executed, it's still executing here. You will see once it is completed, you will see this prompt again, but at the top you can see that the venv folder is getting created, right? So this is nothing but your virtual environment, right? We'll just wait for this terminal to get back me the response, and then we are going to write the next stage. Okay. Okay, so the command is executed successfully, and you can see here you have got the virtual environments, right? You have the include scripts, Python environment, config file, everything which is into your workspace, right? So this is your virtual environment and this is your workspace, right? So now this is my virtual environment inside this project, right? But we need to tell this terminal and we need to tell this project that, hey, I want to use this virtual environment, right? Because I just created a virtual environment, I have not activated it. So now you need to activate the virtual environment. So the stage one was to create the virtual environment, which is done using this command. The next thing is to activate the virtual environment, right? Now to activate the virtual environment, if you go to the scripts, you would see that into that same folder you have the scripts and you have something which is called activate, right? So this activate is the command which you need to execute in order to make sure that the environment is activated, right? So how do we do that? We are in the same project, so here we just pass the folder name which is venv, right? Inside the venv I have this folder which is the scripts, so I'll write that here. Okay, and then inside that I have this file which is activate, so I'll just go / and write activate and I hit enter. Okay, so ideally at this point the environment should have been activated, right? And you can see this activate is a PowerShell script and it says that your script cannot be loaded because running the script is disabled on this system, right? So it says that Mukesh, you cannot run scripts on this environment and there is some issue with your PowerShell because this is a PowerShell script, right? So that means that we need to fix the PowerShell issues, right? So now let's try to go and fix that PowerShell issues. So to fix that you have to go to the start menu and open the PowerShell. Okay, you would have the Windows PowerShell. Make sure to run it as an administrator. You can just right click on it and say run as admin. Okay, and that should open this blue color window for you, which is nothing but your PowerShell script, right? So in the PowerShell now we have to get what are the policies which are assigned, right? So I'm just going to copy a command. Let me just get that command. The command is get -execution policy space minus list, right? So this one which you see, this is the command which I put. I just copy pasted and you can see that these are the existing scope policy for execution, right? Now here you can see that the current user is restricted, which means that the current user is not having that execution policy to execute that, and that is why you are not able to create the virtual environment, right? Now I need to make sure that the current user is not restricted, right? So to do that, what I am going to do is I will just copy a command here and I'll paste it here like this, which says set the execution policy to remote signed for the current user. The scope is current user, this is the scope. If you want to change the scope for anything else, let's say local machine, you write the local machine here, right? It's very easy, right? Get the execution policy list, you get this list, set the execution policy remote sign. What do you want to set? For whom? For the current user. Now this is asking for the confirmation. Y is yes and A is yes to all, so I say A and I say enter, right? And that should complete the task. If I just go here and I just check the policy list again, you can see now the local machine is also remote signed and the current user is also remote signed, right? So now the previously the current user was restricted, now it is remote signed, right? And similarly you can change this scope by just using this one, which is the set policies, right? Now if I go back to my Python and if I just try to execute the same, which is venv script/activate, now I am not getting that error, right? So follow these steps in the PowerShell only when you are getting this error. If you are directly able to come to this stage, that means that you already have that, right? I can write CLS and that should clean it, right? Now you can see here there is a green button which is coming, which is venv, which means that now whatever I do is going to stick to this virtual environment, right? So I hope you are able to successfully reach till this point where you have a workspace and now you have a virtual environment, right? If that is the case, just comment down virtual environments and I would understand that yes, you are able to follow along this tutorial. Okay. Now all we have to do is just install the Python extension. To install the extensions, on the side menu you have this option which is called the extensions, or alternatively you can also press Ctrl plus Shift plus X, right? So that will also open the extension window for you. Click on that and that should open the extension for you, and here you just have to search Python. Okay, and then you would see the first one, Python. Click on that and you have to just simply install it, right? So I have already installed it, that's why I am not getting that install button, but since you are running it for the first time, you would have this option here where you have to just click on this button and it will install the Python for you, right? So that's how easy it is to install the Python extension, right? Now once you have installed this Python extension, with that means that now you are ready to write the Python code, right? To go back to that actual screen, you can just click on this button, just two button explorer, and that will get you back to this one, right? Now there is something which is called interpreter, right? So when I was talking about, we talked that Python is running code step by step manner, which means that we need to have a interpreter. Interpreter is something that runs the code in a step by step manner, so I need to have an interpreter. So to select an interpreter, you have the shortcut which is called Ctrl Shift P, right? And here you have this set of interpreter which will come upon. So from here you just have to select this one, which is the Python select interpreter. In case it is not coming, once you install it, just type here Python, and then you have this one which is the Python select interpreter. Select that. Now once you hit enter, you would have this window which is coming up, which is Python 3.399 for the virtual environments. It is recommended, so I'll just double click on it, and now that will create this thing for me. That means that now I have got interpreter which is the Python. Okay, I can hit a quick refresh, and that completes my step of selecting the Python interpreter, right? Okay, so now we have selected the interpreter, and now all we have to do is just run our first Python code, right? So I will go to the Python project, which is this one, which is having this virtual environment, and I'll just go here and click on new file, and I'll call this as, let's say, hello.py, which is the extension for python.py, and hit enter. And now here you have to just write what code you want to execute, right? So I just want to say print. So as you can see, I am getting this intelligence, so I'll select print, and in the print, in the double quotes, I'll just mention hello from Python, right? You can say hello world as well, the traditional, but I say hello from Python. And now to execute this, you have this button at the right side, run Python file, and that should run the Python for you, right? And you can see that this is running into this one, Python script hello.py, and it says hello from Python. So that completes our first Python program. There is one other way of running the program. If you don't want to run it from here, you can use this command, which is Python, put a space, name of the file .py, and that should also run the Python code for you. Okay, so that is it for this video, and I hope you guys were also able to create your first Python program, right? Any more questions, any more comments, feel free to write me in the comments, or you can also drop me an email as well, right? So with that, I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. I hope this was insightful, and I would appreciate your feedback on this video, right? So with that, wrapping this video here, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.